The 14th lesson. The Yogi Path of Attainment. The student who has carefully acquainted himself with the fundamental principles of the Yogi philosophy, as set forth in these lessons, will readily see that anyone who grasps and accepts these teachings and makes them a part of his everyday life will naturally live a very different life from one to whom this present earth life is all, and who believes that death extinguishes individuality and that there is no future life or lives. It will also lead one to live his life rather differently from the person who believes that we are but creatures of a rather capricious providence, having but little responsibility of our own, and that our salvation depends upon a perfunctory belief in certain teachings and a set form of attendance at certain forms of religious worship. Remember, now, please, that the Yogi philosophy has no fault to find with any form of religion. It teaches that all forms of religion are good, and each has its particular place to fill. Each fills the need of humanity in some of its stages. It believes that no matter what form of worship is followed, no matter what conception of deity is held, that every man really worships the one great intelligence, which we know under many names, and that the varying forms of such worship are immaterial, the motive behind each being the real test to be applied. But the Yogi philosophy, and in fact the teachings of all occultists, to whatever race they may belong, or what particular creed may be favored by them, hold that man is a responsible being, that he really makes his own conditions, and bestows his own rewards and punishments as a natural consequence of his acts. It also teaches that man cannot escape his own good, and that though he may slip backward 100 times, still will he always make some little progress, and in the end will conquer his material nature, and then move steadily forward to the great goal. It teaches that we are all God's children, no matter what form of worship we may favor, that there are none of God's children destined to be utterly cut off or damned. It teaches that we are punished by our sins instead of for them, and that the law of cause and effect brings its inevitable result. It emphasizes the teachings that as we sow, so shall we reap, and shows us just how and why we reap what we have sown. It shows us how our lower desires and passions will weigh us down and surround us with environments that will cause us to outlive them and make us so thoroughly sick and tired of them that the soul will, eventually, recoil in horror from its past life of material grossness, and in doing so, will receive an impetus in the right direction. It shows us that we have the Spirit always with us, anxious and willing to give us help and guidance, and that through the Spirit, we are always in close connection with the source of all life and power. Men are of varying temperaments, and the course that will best suit one will not be adapted to the requirements of another. One will seek progress and development in one direction, and another in a different way, and a third still a different course. The Yogi philosophy teaches that the way that seems to appeal the most to a man's general temperament and disposition is the one best adapted to his use at the present time. They divide the path of attainment into 3 paths, leading up to the great main road. They call these 3 paths 1. Raja Yoga, 2. Karma Yoga, and 3. Jnana Yoga. Each of these forms of yoga being a path leading to the great road, and each being traveled by those who may prefer it, but all lead to the same place. In this lesson, we will give a brief description of each of the 3 paths, which together are known to the yogis as the Threefold Path. Some of the teachers treat what is known as Bhakti Yoga as if it were a separate path, but we prefer thinking of it as being an incident of each of the 3 paths, as Bhakti Yoga is really what we call the religious form of yoga, teaching the love and worship of God according to how He appears to us through the colored glasses of our own particular creed. We fail to see how one may follow any of the several yoga paths without being filled with love and reverence for the great center of all life, the Absolute, God, by whatever name we know it. The term Bhakti Yoga really means the way of devotion. Let us trust that all our students, no matter which of the 3 paths they may elect to follow, will carry with them the devotion inculcated in the Bhakti Yoga of the particular religious body with which they are affiliated, and not feel that the Threefold Path calls for their renouncing that which has been dear to them from childhood. On the contrary, We think that a careful study of the yogi philosophy will awaken a new interest in religion and cause many to understand much that they formerly but blindly believed, and will cause them to develop a deeper religious spirit rather than a lesser one. Raja Yoga is devoted to the development of the latent powers in man, the gaining of the control of the mental faculties by the will, the attainment of the mastery of the lower self, the development of the mind to the end that the soul may be aided in its unfoldment. It teaches as its first step the care and control of the body, as taught in Hatha Yoga, holding that the body should be rendered an efficient instrument and under good control before the best results may be attained along mental and psychic lines. Much that the Western world has been attracted to in late years under the name of mental science and similar terms really comes under the head of Raja Yoga. This form of yoga recognizes the wonderful power of the trained mind and will, and the marvelous results that may be gained by the training of the same, and its application by concentration and intelligent direction. It teaches that not only may the mind be directed outward, influencing outside objects and things, but that it may also be turned inward and concentrated upon the particular subject before us, to the end that much hidden knowledge may be unfolded and uncovered. Many of the great inventors are really practicing Raja Yoga unconsciously in this inward application of it, while many leaders in the world of affairs are making use of its outward, concentrated application in their management of affairs. But the follower of the Raja Yoga path is not content alone with the attainment of powers for either of the above uses. He seeks still greater heights and manages by the same or similar processes to turn the searchlight of concentrated mind into his own nature, thus bringing to light many hidden secrets of the soul. Much of the yogi philosophy has been brought to light in this way. The practice of Raja Yoga is eminently practical and is in the nature of the study and practice of chemistry. It proves itself as the student takes each step. It does not deal in vague theories, but teaches experiments and facts from first to last. We hope to be able to give to our students in the near future a practical work on the subject of Hatha Yoga, for which work there seems to be a great need in the Western world, which seems to be waiting to be told how to do these things, which had been stated to be possible by numerous writers who had grasped the theory, but had not acquainted themselves with the practice accompanying the theory. Karma Yoga is the yoga of work. It is the path followed by those who delight in their work, who take a keen interest in doing things with their head or hand, those who believe in work for work's sake. Karma is the Sanskrit word applied to the law of spiritual cause and effect, of which we have spoken in a preceding lesson. Karma Yoga teaches how one may go through life working and taking an interest in action without being influenced by selfish consideration, which might create a fresh chain of cause and effect, which would bind him to objects and things, and thus retard his spiritual progress. It teaches work for work's sake, rather than from a desire for results. Strange as this may seem to many of our Western readers, it is a fact that many of the men of the Western world who have accomplished much have really been possessed of this idea without realizing it, and have really worked for the joy of the action and creative effort, and have really cared but little for the fruit of their labors. Some of them say that they have worked because they could not help it, rather than from the mere desire for material gain. The follower of Karma Yoga seems to himself, at times, as if he were not the real worker, but that his mind and body were doing the work, and he, himself, were standing off and watching himself work or act. There are lower and higher phases of Karma Yoga, which cannot be explained here, as each branch of yoga is a great subject in itself. Jnana Yoga is the yoga of wisdom. It is followed by those of a scientific, intellectual type, who are desirous of reasoning out, proving, experimenting, and classifying the occult knowledge. It is the path of the scholar. Its follower is strongly attracted toward metaphysics. Examples of the idea of Jnana Yoga, apparently widely differing examples, are to be seen in the great philosophers of ancient and modern times, and in the other extreme, those who have a strong tendency toward metaphysical teachings. As a matter of fact, nearly all students of the yogi philosophy are more or less attracted to Jnana Yoga, even though they be said to be following one of the other three paths. These lessons, for instance, are a part of the Jnana Yoga work, although they are combined with other forms of yoga. Many yogis combine in themselves the attributes of the followers of several forms of yoga, although their natural tendencies cause them to favor one of the paths more than the others. Of the 3 forms of yoga, the second, or karma yoga, is perhaps the easiest one to follow for the student. It requires less study and less practice, less of the research of Jnana yoga and less of the training of Raja yoga. The karma yogi simply tries to lead a good life, doing his work to the best of his ability, without being carried away with the hope of reward. He grows into a realization of the truth regarding his nature, and is content to gradually unfold, like a rose, from life to life, until he reaches a high stage of attainment. He does not long for unusual powers, and consequently does not endeavor to develop them. He does not long for the solution of the great problems of nature and life, but is content to live on, one day at a time, knowing and trusting that all will be well with him. And it will. Many of the New Thought people of America are really karma yogis. The Raja yogi, on the contrary, feels a desire to develop his latent powers and to make researches into his own mind. He wishes to manifest hidden powers and faculties, and feels a keen longing to experiment along these lines. He is intensely interested in psychology and psychic phenomena, and all occult phenomena and teachings along similar lines. He is able to accomplish much by determined effort, and often manifests wonderful results by means of the concentrated will and mind. The Jnana yogi's chief pleasure consists in metaphysical reasoning, or subtle intellectual research. He is the philosopher, scholar, preacher, teacher, student, and often goes to extreme lengths in following his favorite line of work, losing sight of the other sides of the subject. The man best calculated to make general advancement along occult lines is the one who avoids running to extremes in any one of the branches of the subject, but who, while in the main following his own inclinations towards certain forms of yoga, still keeps up a general acquaintance with the several phases of the great philosophy. In the end, man must develop on all his many sides, and why not keep in touch with all sides while he journeys along? By following this course, we avoid one-sidedness, fanaticism, narrowness, short-sightedness, and bigotry. Yogi students may be divided into 3 general classes. 1. Those who have made considerable progress along the same lines in past incarnations, and who have awakened to consciousness in the present life, with the strongest tendencies toward occultism and similar subjects. These people learn rapidly, and are conscious of the fact that they are but relearning some lesson learned in the past. They grasp occult truths intuitively, and find in such studies food for the hunger of the soul. These souls are, of course, in various stages of development. Some have but an elementary acquaintance with the subject, their knowledge in the past incarnation having been but slight. Others have progressed further, and are able to go much further in their present work than those who are less developed. Still, others are quite highly developed, and lack but little of having reached the conscious stage of incarnation, that is, the state of being able to awaken to a conscious knowledge of past lives. The last-mentioned subclass are apt to be regarded as queer by their associates, particularly in early life. They appear old and strange to their companions. They feel as if they were strangers in a strange land, but sooner or later are sure to be brought into contact with others, or made acquainted with teachings, which will enable them to take up their studies again. 2. Those who awaken to a conscious knowledge, to a greater or lesser degree, of their past lives, and what they have learned there. Such people are comparatively rare, and yet there are far more of them than is generally supposed, for these people are not apt to bestow their confidence upon chance acquaintances, and generally regard their knowledge and memory of the past as something sacred. These people go through the world, sowing a little seed here, a little seed there, which seed falling onto fertile ground bears fruit in the future incarnations of those who receive them. 3. Those who have heard some occult truths in past incarnations, some words of wisdom, knowledge, or advice dropped by some of those who have advanced further along the path. In their mental soil, if rich, they let these seed thoughts sink deep into them, and in the next life, the plant appears. These people are possessed of an unrest, which makes them dissatisfied with the current explanations of things, and which causes them to search here and there for the truth. which they intuitively know is to be found somewhere. They are often led to run after false prophets, and from one teacher to another, gaining a little truth here, having an error corrected there. Sooner or later, they find an anchorage, and in their rest they lay up stores of knowledge, which, after being digested in the period of soul rest in the astral world, will be of great value to them in their next incarnation. It will be readily recognized that it is practically impossible to give detailed directions suited for the varying needs of these different students. All that can be done, outside of personal instruction from some competent teacher, is to give words of general advice and encouragement. But do not let this discourage you. Remember this: it is a great occult truth. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. The way will be opened up to you step by step. And as each new spiritual need comes into existence, the means to satisfy it will be on the way. It may come from without, it may come from within, but come it will. Do not let discouragement creep over you because you seem to be surrounded by the most unfavorable environments, with no one near to whom you can talk of these great truths that are unfolding before your mental vision. This isolation is probably just what you need in order to make you self-reliant and to cure you of the desire to lean upon some other soul. We have these lessons to learn, and many others, and the way that seems hardest for us to travel is very often the one laid out for us, in order that we may learn the needed lesson well and for good. It follows that one who has grasped the fundamental ideas of this philosophy will begin to find fear dropping from him. For when he realizes just what he is, how can he fear? There being nothing that is able to really hurt him, why should he fear? Worry, of course, follows after fear. And when fear goes, many other minor mental faults follow after it. Envy, jealousy, hate, malice, uncharitableness, and condemnation cannot exist in the mind of one who understands. Faith and trust in the Spirit, and that from which the Spirit comes, must be manifest to the awakened soul. Such a one naturally recognizes the Spirit's guidance and unhesitatingly follows it, without fear, without doubt. Such a one cannot help being kind. To him, the outside world of people seem to be as little children, many of them like babes unborn, and he deals with them charitably, not condemning them in his heart, for he knows them for what they are. Such a one performs the work which is set before him, knowing that such work, be it humble or exalted, has been brought to him by his own acts and desires, or his needs, and that it is all right in any event, and is but the stepping stone to greater things. Such a one does not fear life, does not fear death. Both seem but as differing manifestations of the same thing, one as good as the other. The student who expects to make progress must make his philosophy a part of his everyday life. He must carry it around with him always. This does not mean that he should thrust his views and opinions upon others. In fact, that is expressly contrary to occult teachings. For no one has the right to force opinions upon others, and it is contrary to natural growth and freedom of the individual soul. But the student should be able to carry with him an abiding sense of the reality and truth of his philosophy. He need not be afraid to take it with him anywhere, for it fits into all phases of life. If one cannot take it with him to work, something is wrong with either the philosophy or the work or the individual, and it will help us to work better, to do more earnest work, for we know that the work is necessary for the development of some part of us. Otherwise, it would not be set before us. And no matter how disagreeable the task, we may be able to sing with joy when we realize just what we are and what great things are before us. The slave chained to the galley, if he has peace in his soul and the knowledge in his mind, is far less to be pitied than the king on his throne who lacks these things. We must not shirk our tasks, not run away from our destiny, for we cannot really get rid of them except by performing them. And these very disagreeable things are really strengthening our character if we are learning our lesson aright. And then, remember, even these things shall pass away. One of the greatest hindrances to the progress of the student into the higher stages of occultism particularly the phenomenal phases, is the lack of self-control. When one wishes to be placed in possession of power, which, if carelessly used or misused, may result in the hurt of oneself or others, it is the greatest importance that such a one should have attained the mastery of self, the control of the emotional side of his nature. Imagine a man possessed of high occult powers, losing his temper and flying into a rage, sending forth vibrations of hate and anger, intensified by the increased force of his developed powers. Such exhibitions in a man who has obtained occult powers would be very harmful to him, as they would, perhaps, be manifested upon a plane where such things have an exaggerated effect. A man whose investigations lead him on to the astral plane should be aware of such a loss of self-control, as a failing of this kind might be fatal to him. But so nicely is the world of the higher forces balanced, that a man of violent temper, or one who lacks self-control, can make but little progress in occult practices, this being a needed check. So, one of the first things to be accomplished by the student who wishes to advance is the mastery of his emotional nature and the acquirement of self-control. A certain amount of courage of the higher sort is also needed, for one experiences some strange sights and happenings on the astral plane, and those who wish to travel there must have learned to master fear. One also needs calmness and poise. When we remember that worry and kindred emotions cause vibrations around us, it may readily be seen that such conditions of mind are not conducive to psychical research. In fact, the best results cannot be obtained when these things are present. The occultist who wishes to attain great powers must first purge himself of selfish grasping for these things for the gratification of his own base ends. For the pursuit of occult powers with this desire will only bring pain and disappointment, and the one who attempts to prostitute psychic power for base ends will bring upon himself a whirlwind of undesirable results. Such forces, when misused, react as a boomerang upon the sender. The true occultist is filled with love and brotherly feeling for his fellow men, and endeavors to aid them instead of to beat them down in their progress. Of all the numerous books written for the purpose of throwing light on the path of the student of occultism, we know of none better fitted for the purpose than that wonderful little book called Light on the Path, written down by M.C. at the instigation of some intelligences far above the ordinary. It is veiled in the poetic style common to the Orientals, and at first glance may seem paradoxical, but it is full of the choicest bits of occult wisdom for those who are able to read it. It must be read between the lines, and it has a peculiarity that will become apparent to anyone who may read it carefully. That is, it will give you as much truth as you are able to grasp today, and tomorrow when you pick it up, it will give you more from the same lines. Look at it a year from now, and new truths will burst upon you, and so on and on. It contains statements of truth so wonderfully stated, and yet half concealed, that as you advance in spiritual discernment and are ready for greater truths each day, you will find that in this book, veil after veil will be lifted from before the truth, until you are fairly dazzled. It is also remarkable as a book which will give consolation to those in trouble or sorrow. Its words, even though they may be but half understood, will ring in the ears of its readers, and, like a beautiful melody, will soothe and comfort and rest those who hear it. We advise all of our students to read this little book often and with care. They will find that it will describe various spiritual experiences through which they will pass, and will prepare them for the next stage. Many of our students have asked us to write a little book in the way of an elementary explanation of Light on the Path. Perhaps the Spirit may lead us to do so at some time in the future. Perhaps not. It is not without a feeling of something like sadness that we write these concluding lines. When we wrote our first lesson, we bade our students be seated for a course of talks, plain and simple, upon a great subject. Our aim was to present these great truths in a plain, practical, simple manner, so that many would take interest in them and be led toward higher presentations of the truth. We have felt that love and encouragement, which is so necessary for a teacher, and have been assured of the sympathy of the class from the first. But on looking over our work, it seems that we have said so little, have left unsaid so much, and yet we've done the best we could, considering the small space at our disposal and the immense field to be covered. We feel that we have really only begun, and yet it is now time to say goodbye. Perhaps we have made some points a little more clear to a few who have been perplexed. Perhaps we have opened a door to those who were seeking entrance to the temple. Who knows? If we have done even a little for one person, our time has been well spent. At some future time, we may feel called upon to pass on to you a higher and more advanced presentation of this great subject. That is a matter which depends on your own desires. If you need us, you will find us, ready and willing to join you in the study of the great truths of the Yogi philosophy. But before you take the next step onward, be sure that you understand these elementary lessons thoroughly. Go over and over them until your mind has fully grasped the principles. You will find new features presenting themselves with each reading. As your minds unfold, you will find new truths awaiting you, even in the same pages that you have read and reread several times. This not because of any special merit in our work, for this work is crude, very crude to our idea, but because of the inherent truth of the philosophy itself, which renders anything written upon it to be filled with subject for thought and earnest consideration. Goodbye, dear students. We thank you for your kindness in listening to us during the term of this class. We have felt your sympathy and love, as many of you must have felt ours. We feel sure that as you read these lines, filled with our earnest thoughts of kinship to you, you will feel our nearness to you in the spirit. You will be conscious of that warm hand clasp which we extend to you across the miles that separate us in the flesh. Remember these words from Light on the Path. When the disciple is ready to learn, then he is accepted, acknowledged, recognized. It must be so, for he has lit his lamp, and it cannot be hidden. Therefore we say, peace be with you. Class notes. Since sending out our special notice in August, we have received kindly letters from hundreds of our friends and students, asking us about the continuance of our work. Many suggestions were offered, a number of which have been adopted. We thank all of our friends for their kind wishes and sympathy. We were undecided about continuing the work for another year, as it meant much work and expense, and the prices which we have been charging for our books, etc., left but a very small margin after the printer's bills and postage had been paid. But we have received so many requests to continue that we do not see how we can escape, and we have determined to again place our shoulder to the wheel and help to push along the load. We have determined to publish the remainder of the set of Yogi books, beginning with Raja Yoga, upon which we have begun work, and which will be followed by books taking up the main features of each branch of yoga, as outlined in our 14th lesson. Raja Yoga will deal with the psychic and mental planes of the Yogi philosophy, and will go into the side of the subject that deals with psychic phenomena, thought power, personal magnetism, thought transference, concentration, mental science, development of the subconscious power, and similar subjects. It will be, to many, the most interesting book of the series. We cannot promise it at any special time, but the work of preparing it will go ahead steadily, now that we have finally determined to push the work vigorously, and it will be announced in due time, probably before the winter months reach us. Don't trouble to ask us just when we expect to publish it. You will be notified in plenty of time. We call your attention to an announcement on another page of our new advanced course lessons. This will be one of our most important works and will be on a higher plane than our 1904 lessons, and is intended to lead the students of the latter course still further along the path. We ask all to read carefully what we have to say on this subject. In addition to the principal books of the Yogi series, we will from time to time issue smaller books on subjects touching upon the points of Yogi philosophy and Oriental occultism, such as psychic healing, regeneration, or conservation of the life energy, etc. We may also, before very long, publish a little book explaining the doctrine laid down in Light on the Path. that wonderful little manual of occult teaching. Many of our students have asked for some teaching for beginners, which would explain the hard things and dark sayings of the little manual. While we have no idea of attempting to add to the wisdom conveyed in that little book, we may be able to throw some light on the parts which have puzzled beginners. We may publish a number of other books during the next 12 months or so, but we will be governed altogether by the workings of the Spirit in the matter. If there arises a need for any special teaching, you may rest assured that it will be supplied by those best fitted for the work. This is the law. We call your attention to the fact that we are about to issue a limited edition of the 1904 lessons bound in book form. See notice on another page. This book will be bound in regular book form, stiff covers, the binding being vellum deluxe. It will make quite a large book, over 275 pages, and will present a handsome appearance. Special price to class members, only $1. Better order it at once, before the edition is exhausted. Do not bother about the money. Pay for it when you get ready. You know our plan of doing business on trust. The special combination offer for subscriptions to take the class course still remains open, and members may take subscriptions for the lessons and premium books at the special price, $1, of which we get 50 cents, and the class member retains 50 cents as his or her commission. You remember the offer, do you not? To make sure, we reprint the notice on another page of this booklet. The fact that the lessons are all issued should not interfere with the work of securing new members, as the lessons are always as good as new, and the dollar's worth is always a very good dollar's worth. And the 50-cent rate to agents is just as good now as it was when it was made. It is the best dollar's worth of books ever offered the public, and the commission offer is the most liberal of which we have any knowledge. You sell the customer $1.85 worth of our books and charge him only $1 for them. Then you take 50 cents out of the dollar and send us the remaining 50 cents. This leaves us by 50 cents for $1.85 worth of goods. If you wish to realize just how cheap these books are, 50 cents net to us, just take the bundle around to some printer whom you know and ask him how much it will cost to print them. You will be surprised at the result. Send for more application blanks if you need them. We were delayed in getting our new book, Hatha Yoga, from the press, and consequently could not get it into the mails at the time promised. Our students, however, bore with us most patiently under the circumstances, and seemed to instinctively realize just what was the trouble, the only anxiety expressed being that possibly the book had been lost in the mails. However, they are all mailed, finally, and we trust that every purchaser has received his or her copy and is pleased with it. It makes a larger book than we had anticipated, but so much the better for those who ordered it. If any purchasers of the book have failed to receive it, we ask that we be notified, and we will make good the loss. We allow no one to lose money by dealing with us, and we request all purchasers of our publications to promptly notify us of any failure to receive what they have ordered. Advanced Course in Occultism. We have decided to publish a continuation of our Yogi lesson work, which will lead the student onto higher planes of the subject, and which will touch upon the deeper phases of occultism. The class course just completed was of necessity quite elementary, and was designed to acquaint the student with the fundamental principles underlying the study of the occult philosophy. We have been urged by many of our students to take them from the kindergarten stage up to the more advanced planes of the study, and we have received the approval and encouragement of certain minds for which we have the profoundest respect in this contemplated advanced work. Much of the advanced teaching which we have in store for our students is scarcely fitted for the general public, and we have taken the precaution of requiring that all applicants for this advanced course must have acquainted themselves with our elementary course. In other words, we will not accept subscriptions for this new course from persons who have not studied the elementary course, the lessons of the 1904 class. This rule will be rigidly adhered to, now and in the future. Only those who are students of the 1904 class are eligible for membership in the new class. Others who are desirous of taking the new course and who have not studied the old one must first take the original course and certify to us that they have carefully studied same before we will accept their subscriptions for the advanced course. This may seem like an arbitrary rule, but we have carefully considered it and feel that we have good reasons for our position. The advanced course will take up the higher and deeper phases of the subject, and is not exactly the kind of work that should be scattered, broadcast among people who have not prepared themselves by preliminary reading and study. We do not intend to widely advertise this advanced course, nor will we publish in advance the titles of the lessons, as we have no desire to attract the attention of those who seek sensational reading. We want only earnest students of the occult truths, who may feel themselves drawn to the subject. Those for whom the teachings are intended will feel attracted to them, and will find out about them by the operation of the law of attraction. If you feel a drawing toward us in this work, we will be glad to enroll you on our list of subscribers to the course. But we have no desire to urge it upon you. The matter is one entirely for the guidance of your higher self. Let it decide for you. The advanced course lessons will consist of 12 lessons, one each month commencing on October 1st, 1904, and continuing on the 1st of every month thereafter. They will be printed in booklet form, 32 pages in each lesson, clear, plain type. The size of the pages being the same as in Hatha Yoga, that is, slightly larger than our 1904 lessons, and on finer paper. The price of the advanced course will be $1, special to students of the 1904 class only. If you feel attracted toward the work, we will be glad to enter you on the roster. We enclose an application blank to be filled in by the applicant.